Hello and welcome to the Illinois Association of Park Districts Parkcast. I'm Wayne Utterback, Director of Communications and Digital Content, and today I'm joined by Raquel Garcia-Alvarez, Stewardship Program Coordinator for the Forest Preserves of Cook County, to talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Thank you so much for taking a couple minutes out of your day to join me, Raquel.
Oh, it's good to be here, Wayne. Thank you for having me.
Now, first, I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about the Forest Preserves of Cook County in general, for maybe somebody who might not be familiar with your organization.
Sure. So the Forest Preserves of Cook County, we are the largest and oldest forest preserve district in the nation. We also are the most biologically diverse and culturally diverse county in the state of Illinois. And that is one of the reasons why racial equity, diversity, and inclusion are important to us, because as we invest in improving the biodiversity of our 70,000 acres that we have throughout the county, we also recognize that it's important for us to invest in that cultural diversity as well.
Now, that was actually going to be my first question, was just starting the discussion by getting a basic overview of what those initiatives mean to your agency. Obviously, you said incredibly diverse population there, but how important of a role are these initiatives in helping serve your community?
So with the Forest Preserves of Cook County, we are the most culturally diverse county in the state, and having culturally relevant programming has always been important to us. But in 2018, there was a hate crime that happened in one of our forest preserve sites, and the incident was recorded and it went viral. And while it was a really unfortunate incident for us, it really brought to the forefront what our people of color were saying, that they didn't feel welcome in a lot of natural areas or green spaces. So it made the forest preserves really prioritize the racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. So again, even though that was a very ugly incident that involved this young Puerto Rican woman who was being berated by this drunken older white man, who was telling her that it was disrespectful for her to wear a Puerto Rican shirt. And, as we know, Puerto Rico is part of the US. And she had a picnic permit and everything, like she was being well-spoken and kind. It was an unfortunate incident, and it was made worse because one of our police officers was there and didn't step in, so it just felt, once that happened and once it went viral, the forest preserves really needed to evaluate, were we being welcoming to all? Because we would say, the forest preserves is for everyone, but not everyone feels welcome.
Now, can you run me maybe through some of the things that you've been able to accomplish when it comes to READY? Like, what are some of the things that you've been able to bring to the table that have kind of come to fruition?
One of our initiatives, because people feel more welcome when they see that a staff member that reflects their diversity. So one of the key things that we did was work with our human resources to modify our hiring panel. So that way our hiring panel was representative. So that way it wasn't all white males on a hiring panel, because it can be a little intimidating when you have 3 panelists and if they're the same gender. So that is one change that we've made. And then we also evaluated how we got the word out through our brochures. So we have these quarterly brochures that would go out to various organizations. And when we applied a READY lens to it, we realized that we probably weren't hitting many of the organizations that we thought we were, and we prioritized those organizations within economically disconnected areas. So those were just kind of 2 changes that we've done to operationalize READY within the forest preserves.
Now, I know you mentioned that, working on making sure that there's racial equity, making sure there's diversity and inclusion, these are things that are always taking place. But I feel like I've heard more, DEI just in general being mentioned more and more, being discussed more and more. How important do you think it is for those topics to start being put on the forefront now?
I think it is very important because one thing that people have asked us to do is to acknowledge the history and how systemic racism has played a role. And we, as a large agency, as I mentioned, we're the largest and oldest forest preserve district in the nation. We have benefited or have played a role directly in that. And I think that's a huge step, because even when we were acknowledging that we are part of this system, other nature organizations or our colleagues are saying we don't need to do that. And it's like, we do. If we are to move forward and heal, we need to first acknowledge that step. So I think it's important that we recognize the history, because, the forest preserves has a rich history of civic leaders starting it, but it also we have a history of where there was segregation here, right? So.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up, because, there are things that can be considered roadblocks or obstacles to making, DEI initiatives, not just a talking point, but reality. What do you feel are some of those obstacles? What do you think are some of the challenges that an organization or agency might face when trying to move forward with progressing?
Yeah, in some of the trainings that I've been doing, I preface the training with saying, you may feel really uncomfortable or experience a lot of discomfort, but there's a lot of growth within that discomfort. So if you do feel uncomfortable, just sit with it and breathe, and know that what we're teaching is not a personal attack. It's more about, we're talking about systems. And we have to recognize that these systems exist in order for us to improve and make things better, because at the end, we want to make everything better for everyone. And I think once people start sitting within that discomfort and realizing, like, okay, we're making things better, then it becomes a little bit more digestible for them. And then you can start having those conversations of like, how do we make our workplace better? How do we become more inclusive? And wouldn't that be nice that our workplace had a culture of belonging and you felt really good about showing up for work?
Now, one of the things I found really interesting that you mentioned is it's not just having this equity and this inclusion in your community in general, but it's also in the workplace. Do you feel like it's when an organization is trying to tackle this, when they're trying to move forward with this, they have to think about both of those elements, both employment wise and the public sector?
Well, I think it goes hand in hand, because we at the Forest Preserves, we're public servants, right? And one of the requirements for us is that we need to live within the county. So we are both the residents and the workers as well. And we also have families that may live in the county and benefit from the Forest Preserve. So I do think those two things go hand in hand, where if employees feel better about where they work at, then they will also be the largest advocates for the Forest Preserve. So bringing other people out and wanting to try different things. I myself will talk to a lot of Latino communities, because those are my people, like at families, when I'm talking about like, oh, how is work? And and I'll invite people to come out to do stewardship or kayaking with me. So I am one of the biggest advocates for the Forest Preserves in my mind.
I was going to ask, how do you engage the community? How do you reach out and bring people in who maybe feel like they don't have a place?
It can be challenging, because not the forest preserves, some of them are very accessible where it's across the street, and then others, people have to get in their car or take public transportation, and it may take them a while. So you kind of have to describe what it is that you can do there. And usually invitations work really well when it's a group, inviting families out to participate at an event or working with a local organization that can bring them out, because and them experiencing the forest preserves is really helpful. And a few years ago we won an Emmy for a documentary that was made about the forest preserves. Like, it's called Chicago's Truest Nature, and there's like a 30-second trailer, and we showed that, and people are like, oh wow, I didn't realize that I could go fishing or kayaking or do these things, and it's right here within my backyard, or it's a mile away from the mall that I go to. So that also helps too, of just letting people know, hey, if you're going to Brookfield Zoo, which is also on forest preserve land, right across the street are forest preserves where you can ride your bike.
I imagine having those kinds of experiences helps build a really strong foundation for kind of getting people out there, getting people to engage with the things that are being offered in your forest preserves. And not only that, but I imagine that it then builds this, within families, within different generations, kind of this idea that this is ours too.
Yeah. Yes. Because I believe that culture and nature are one and the same, where our nature influences culture, and a lot of people have those connections to nature, but they probably don't know where is the open space close to them where they can do these activities. Because, for instance, my family is from Mexico, and we live in the mountain region, so if you wanted to go hiking, you just walked outside and there was the mountain. And here you, like I said, have to get in your car and drive a little bit in order to go for a hike.
Now, I wanted to ask you one more question. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak with me, but for someone who's leading an agency who might want to start placing a focus on these initiatives to have more diversity, to have more equity and inclusion, what's the best way for them to get started? Because I know there may be some folks who say, I don't even know how to begin the process. What would you suggest to them?
That's a very good question. And I think it's important to evaluate the work that we're doing. And it kind of goes again of asking ourselves some different questions. Are we serving all the residents, or are we serving our demographic area? Because I think people will be surprised at how diverse maybe their county is. And I say that because with some of the trainings that I've done, I've had to also educate people like, well, the demographics of Cook County have changed. It's now, 20-25% Latino, and things are shifting. And not only must we prepare for what's currently happening, but also for future. So I would just say, what programming are you offering? And then evaluating, are you reaching the audience that you like to reach?
All right. Well, Raquel, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to just sit and talk with me a little bit about these initiatives. It's always great to hear about fantastic work being done, finding ways to serve everyone in the community. And I appreciate you just giving us a little bit of the insights that the forest preserves of Cook County are doing to address these things. So thank you so much, Raquel, for taking time out of your day.
Oh, you're welcome. And I do also want to leave with, there is one tool that I like using. It's the racial equity tool by Portland Parks and Recreation. And I really like that tool because they list it in a way that it's similar to the scientific method, so we as scientists or natural area practitioners are used to, the scientific method. So it makes it a little bit more applicable to the work that we could be doing, because sometimes people will ask well, so what is the ready lens. And it's like, it's not my special glasses or anything. It's, this tool that you can apply to your work.
All right. Well, is that something someone can access online or?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, then
Yeah.
we'll definitely put a link in the description of the video then. So anybody who's curious about that can check that out.
Okay, great. And I'll send it to you via email. So.
All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Raquel. I appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Thank you.